She said, "Brian helped me move on," with my medals on his chest. I was still holding the duffel I carried through 2 deployments when I opened the door and found my wife, Lauren, laughing beside a man wearing a captain's bars, a man who shook my hand and called himself a hero. He'd even memorized my service dates, but when I looked closer, his uniform told a story no real soldier would ever claim. Then I found out he'd used my deployment papers to apply for a VA loan. He didn't just steal my wife, he stole my name, my rank, my honor. But I wasn't the only one watching. Before we begin, let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. My name is Caleb Winslow, and I'm 39 years old. After 18 months in logistics overseas, I'm finally standing on American soil with my duffel bag and discharge papers. My wife Lauren, who I married 12 years ago, stopped writing regularly 6 months back. My older brother Craig, a retired military police sergeant who always had my back, kept an eye on our accounts while I was gone. The desert heat and endless supply runs weren't glamorous, but I did my duty. Lauren used to cry during our video calls, begging me to stay safe, to come home to her. Now my boots hit familiar pavement, but something feels wrong. That tight knot in my gut has been growing since her forgotten birthday card and that strange charity letter. But let me start from the beginning. I pulled up to my house around sunset, killing the rental car's engine before it could announce me. The gravel crunched under my boots as I made my way up our driveway, past a shiny black F-150 I didn't recognize. My heart thumped harder with each step. You ever get that feeling where your body knows something's wrong before your mind catches up? The porch light wasn't on, but I could see well enough to spot the muddy boots by the front door. Size 13, expensive tactical brand, definitely not mine. I always kept my gear clean, a habit from basic that stuck. These looked like they'd never seen real dirt until recently. I heard laughter through the door, Lauren's high pitch I knew by heart, and underneath it, a man's deeper rumble. My key slid into the lock like it was moving through molasses. The door creaked open, and the laughter cut off like someone hit mute. Lauren shot up from the couch, her face draining of color. "Caleb?" Her voice cracked on my name. You didn't call." "Wanted to surprise you," I said, but my eyes were locked on the man beside her. He wore ACU's, Army Combat Uniform, with a captain's bars gleaming on his collar. Something about how he wore it seemed rehearsed, like a kid playing dress-up. He didn't flinch or look guilty. Instead, he smiled and stood up smooth as butter, hand extended. "Captain Brian Reed," he said, like we were at some damn cocktail party. "You must be Caleb. Lauren's told me so much about you." I didn't take his hand. I was too busy studying his uniform. The patches were wrong, unit insignia that didn't match his supposed rank, ribbons arranged in an order that made no sense to anyone who'd actually earned them. Every detail screamed faker, but he wore that confidence like armor. "We met through a support group," he continued, dropping his hand but keeping that smile plastered on. "For military spouses. Lauren was having a rough time. You know how it is." The room felt too small, the air too thick. I looked at Lauren, waiting for her to deny it, to show some sign this wasn't what it seemed. Instead, she lifted her chin and said the words that would haunt me. "Brian helped me move on." Move on. Like I was already dead. Like 18 months of service, of missing her every day, of planning our future. Like none of it mattered. My lungs forgot how to work. The room tilted sideways, and I grabbed the doorframe to stay upright. The family photos on the wall, me in uniform, Lauren in her wedding dress, us on vacation in Myrtle Beach. They all seemed to mock me now. "I think you should leave," Lauren said softly. She wasn't looking at Brian. I didn't argue. Didn't curse. Didn't do anything but turn around and walk out, my boots heavy on the steps I'd built with my own hands 3 summers ago. The gravel crunched again under my feet, but this time each step felt like breaking glass. I drove to Craig's place on autopilot, muscle memory taking me to the only safe harbor I had left. He opened the door, took one look at my face, and pulled me inside without a word. The smell of engine grease and old leather hit me. Craig's garage-turned-living room hadn't changed since high school. "She's with someone," I managed to get out, collapsing onto his couch. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. "Says he's a captain. Brian Reed." Craig's eyes narrowed. He'd been MP long enough to spot a fake from a mile away. "What unit?" "His patches." I shook my head. Nothing matched. But he's got her convinced. "That clown's never seen a fob," Craig growled, using the military slang for forward operating base. He disappeared into the kitchen and came back with 2 beers, setting one in front of me. How long's this been going on? I couldn't answer. The humiliation was too fresh, too raw. Here I was, a grown man with multiple tours under his belt, shaking on his brother's couch like some teenager who got dumped at prom. But it wasn't just the betrayal eating at me. It was the disrespect to the uniform, to everything we'd sacrificed for. Craig handed me the beer, but I just held it, letting the cold seep into my palm. The familiar scent of motor oil and WD-40 from his garage drifted through the house, smells that usually meant safety, home. Now, they just reminded me how far I was from where I thought I'd be tonight. You don't have to talk about it, Craig said, settling into his worn leather recliner. The springs creaked, same sound they'd made since we were kids sneaking downstairs to watch late-night movies. But that uniform he was wearing? Something ain't right there. I took a slow breath, trying to steady my voice. He had captain's bars, but the unit patches. I closed my eyes, picturing it. 82nd Airborne Division patch on one shoulder, but then a 10th Mountain Division combat patch on the other. Plus, ribbons that... I shook my head. The arrangement was all wrong, like someone Googled military medals and just stuck them wherever. Craig's face darkened. He'd spent 15 years as an MP. Checking IDs and spotting fakes became second nature to him. That's not just wrong, that's impossible. No one serves in both those units as an officer without a paper trail a mile long. And the ribbons? He snorted. That's not a uniform, that's a Halloween costume with guts. Maybe I saw it wrong, I said, but even as the words left my mouth, I knew I was lying to myself. 18 years of service teaches you to read a uniform like a book. Every patch, every pin, every ribbon tells a story. Brian's story had more holes than a shot-up target. You didn't see it wrong, Craig said firmly. You know what you saw. Question is, what's this joker playing at? Real soldiers don't mix and match units like they're picking out ties. The beer in my hand had gone warm. I set it down untouched. If he's not legitimate? My throat closed up around the words. Craig leaned forward, his eyes intent. Then what? Then Lauren threw away 12 years of marriage for a fraud. The words tasted like ash in my mouth. And I don't know which is worse, that she believed him or that she didn't care enough to check. We sat in silence for a while, the only sound the tick of Craig's old wall clock and the distant hum of traffic on the highway. That clock had witnessed a lot of late-night conversations between us, but none quite like this. Morning came too soon. I woke up with a stiff neck from Craig's couch, my phone buzzing with a text from Lauren. Meet me at Denny's. We need to talk. The restaurant was almost empty when I walked in. Lauren sat in a booth by the window, already halfway through a coffee. She didn't look up when I slid into the seat across from her. I'm filing for divorce, she said, straight and clean, like ripping off a bandage. No. Hello. No. How are you? No. I'm sorry. Just the death of our marriage announced between sips of coffee. My hands clenched under the table. 12 years, Lauren. Doesn't that mean anything? She finally met my eyes. There was nothing there. No pain, no regret, just emptiness. It meant 18 months of silence. It meant sleeping alone while you chose duty over me. Again. I was serving our country, I said, but she was already shaking her head. You were serving yourself. Brian understands what I need. He's here. I wanted to tell her about the uniform, about the inconsistencies, about how no real captain would wear his service that way, but the words died in my throat. She wouldn't believe me, or worse, she wouldn't care. Back at Craig's, I found him at the kitchen table, his laptop open and a fresh pot of coffee brewing. The smell of dark roast filled the air, same blend Mom used to make when we needed to face hard truths. She's filing, I said, dropping into a chair. Craig poured 2 cups without a word, then set one in front of me. Steam curled up between us like question marks. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and determined. If this guy's pretending to be one of us, I'll bury him with the truth. He met my eyes. No one steals valor from my brother. Not in this town. You ever watch someone steal your life piece by piece? It's like dying by paper cuts. Brian Reed was everywhere I turned that week, strutting around our town of 15,000 like he owned every inch of it. I was grabbing coffee at Miller's when I first saw him working the room. He had that practiced smile, the kind that shows too many teeth. The sheriff was there, hanging on Brian's every word about some firefight in Kandahar. My coffee went cold while I listened to him describe terrain I knew didn't match reality. But nobody else seemed to notice or care. "You should have seen him at the high school yesterday," the barista told me, stars in her eyes. Gave this amazing speech about leadership under fire. The kids were mesmerized. I gripped my cup harder, remembering the real lessons of service, the quiet ones about supply chains and making sure our people had what they needed when they needed it. No glory, just duty. But try explaining that to teenagers who want war stories. Craig was working his own angles. He'd spent 3 nights straight on the phone, calling old MP buddies and unit liaisons. "Nothing adds up," he told me over beers in his garage. "No record of a Captain Brian Reed in any of the units he claims. No combat medals registered. Hell, I can't even verify his basic training dates." The local news piece was what really got me. Channel 5 did this fluffy profile on him. Local hero gives back to community. There he was, looking straight into the camera with that practiced sincerity while he talked about brothers lost in combat and his ongoing mission to serve. "Turn it off," I told Craig, but he shook his head. "Watch his tells," Craig said, pointing at the screen. "See how he touches his collar when they ask about specific operations? Classic stress response. He's making it up as he goes." I'd seen enough lies in the service to know Craig was right. But that didn't make it easier when I ran into Lauren and Brian at the grocery store. They were picking out wine, all smiles and casual touches. Lauren wore this new designer workout set I'd never seen before. Must have been nice, spending my deployment savings on her new life. "Oh my God, did you hear?" Mrs. Peterson caught me in the parking lot, all excited like she was sharing good news. "They're giving Brian that big award at the Memorial Day ceremony, the Valor in Service Medal. Lauren must be so proud." My stomach dropped through the pavement. The Valor in Service Award was our town's highest honor for military service. They only gave it out once a year, on Memorial Day, in front of everybody who mattered. "When did this happen?" I managed to ask. "Oh, the committee voted last week. Brian's been doing so much for the community. Speaking at schools, organizing that Veterans Breakfast Club at the diner. Such a wonderful man." I found Craig at his shop, elbow deep in an engine. One look at my face, and he wiped his hands, grabbed 2 sodas from his mini fridge. "Spill it." "Memorial Day ceremony," I said, cracking the can. "They're giving him the Valor Medal." Craig's face went through about 5 different shades of red. "Like hell they are." He grabbed his phone, started scrolling through contacts. "Remember Tommy Martinez? Works for Channel 5 now. Says Brian's been pushing this whole hometown hero narrative for months, building up to something big." "The award's just part of it," I said, the pieces clicking together. "He's creating a character. The decorated captain, the community leader, the perfect mark," Craig finished. "Question is, what's his endgame?" I thought about Lauren's new clothes, the way Brian seemed to be everywhere that mattered. "Money? Status?" "Both," Craig said. "But there's something else. Tommy said Brian's been asking weird questions about VA loans, service documentation." He looked at me hard. "You still got copies of your deployment papers at the house?" "Lauren has access to everything," I said, and the implications hit me like a freight train. "You think?" "I think we better start digging deeper," Craig said, already reaching for his laptop. "Because if this guy's playing the long con, I think he is. That medal ceremony isn't his finish line. It's his starting point." I stared at my soda, watching bubbles rise and burst. Each one felt like another piece of my life floating away. But now we had something solid to chase. You learn in logistics that every supply chain has a weak link. We just had to find Brian's before Memorial Day turned him from a local hero into an untouchable legend. You ever notice how the truth leaves a trail? Like footprints in wet cement? Try to cover them up, and you just make a bigger mess. That's what Craig taught me back when he was MP, and now we were following Brian's tracks with everything we had. Craig's garage became our command center. The familiar smell of motor oil and coffee grounds took me back to countless summer afternoons, helping him restore that old Chevelle. But instead of engine parts, we spread out papers, laptops, and contact lists across his workbench. "Got Marcus on the line," Craig said one evening, phone pressed to his ear. Marcus had been his CO during Desert Storm. "Yeah, brother. Captain Brian Reed. Claims he was with the 10th Mountain Division, then transferred to—" Craig's eyes met mine, shaking his head. "Nothing? You sure? All right. Thanks, man." I crossed another unit off our list. That's what? The fifth dead end? Sixth, Craig corrected, tossing his phone down. Nobody's heard of him. Not one single verified contact. We dug deeper. I called base command pretending to need speaker verification for an upcoming veterans event. Craig sweet-talked his way through 3 different military records offices. Every search came up empty. No DD-214, no service record, no Captain Brian Reed. Look at this, Craig said, turning his laptop around. It was Lauren's Instagram. Public, of course. She loved an audience. There she was, tanned and smiling on some beach I'd never seen, Brian's arm around her waist. The caption read, "Living my best life with my hero hearts." My throat tightened. That smile used to be mine. Those vacation days were supposed to be our fresh start after deployment. Instead, she was spending my combat pay on weekend getaways with a fraud. "You okay?" Craig asked. "Yeah," I lied. The same way I had during those long desert nights when the silence got too heavy. Just focus on the mission. Then my phone rang. Unknown number, but I recognized the area code. My bank's corporate office. "Mr. Winslow? This is Sarah from Veterans United Home Loans. I'm calling to verify some documentation we received regarding your VA loan application." My heart stopped. "I haven't applied for any loans." "Oh," a pause. Papers shuffling. "We have an application here using your deployment verification documents. The applicant is listed as Brian Reed, with supporting military documentation matching your service dates and—" The rest of her words faded into static. My legs went weak, and I grabbed Craig's workbench for support. The bastard hadn't just stolen my wife and my honor. He'd stolen my identity. "Sir?" Sarah's voice cut through the fog. "Are you saying you didn't authorize this application?" "No," I managed. "I absolutely did not." Craig was watching me, concern etched across his face. I put the phone on speaker and set it on the bench. "Can you tell me exactly what documents were submitted?" I asked. "Let me check." More shuffling. "We have copies of deployment orders, service verification forms, and, this is odd, mixed documentation showing both your name and Mr. Reed's on various pages. Some appear to have been altered." Craig's face darkened. "Ma'am, I'm a former military police sergeant. Would you be willing to send copies of those documents to a secure email?" Given the circumstances, absolutely. We take fraud very seriously. After she hung up, I stood there in Craig's garage, staring at nothing. The familiar tools on the wall, the half-rebuilt transmission on the floor, everything felt surreal. Like I was back in that transport plane, half awake, unsure if I was really heading home or just dreaming it. "He used my papers," I said finally. "My actual deployment documents." "Lauren," Craig growled, "she had access to your files. Must have given them to him." "But why? He's already got her, the house, my savings." "Because this was never about Lauren," Craig said, pulling up his laptop again. "She was just his way in. Think about it. He's building a whole new identity. The hero story, the community connections, and now a VA loan would cement everything, make it official on paper." I leaned against the workbench, the metal cold against my palms. "He's not just playing dress-up anymore." "No," Craig agreed. "This is federal fraud, identity theft. Hell, with the altered documents, we're looking at multiple felonies." The bank's email arrived with a soft ping. Craig opened the attachments, and there they were, my deployment papers, clumsily doctored with Brian's name. Seeing them twisted into his lies made something snap inside me. All those months in the desert, all that sacrifice, reduced to props in his con game. "What's our next move?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Craig studied the documents, his expression hardening. "We've got him. Now we just need to decide where to spring the trap." I hadn't unpacked my duffel since getting home. It sat there in Craig's spare room like some kind of military ghost, desert dust still clinging to the canvas. The sight of it twisted my gut. 18 months of my life compressed into olive drab nylon and zippers. You ever notice how silence has weight? How it can press down on your chest until breathing feels like work? That's what filled Craig's kitchen that evening as I stared at my phone, scrolling through Brian's latest performance. There he was, fresh-faced and earnest, in a carefully wrinkled uniform, talking straight to camera. "To all my brothers and sisters who served, who know what it's like when the nightmares come." His voice cracked perfectly. He wiped away what I'm sure was a glycerin tear. "We carry burdens civilians can't understand. But we carry them together. The comment section flooded with hearts and thank yous. Our town's Facebook page shared it. Local hero speaks truth about PTSD. Lauren had already reposted with a string of heart emojis and so proud of my brave man. My hand shook as I set the phone down. The kitchen felt too small, too warm. I yanked open Craig's fridge, grabbed a beer I didn't really want, and pressed the cold bottle against my forehead. The chill didn't help. Nothing helped. The file Craig had built on Brian's lies sat on the counter. Photos, screenshots, timeline inconsistencies. Looking at it made me sick. What was the point? The town had their hero. Lauren had her story. I was just the bitter ex, the guy who couldn't handle his wife moving on. Maybe it was better to let it go, pack up what dignity I had left, and disappear. My fingers traced the file's edge. One quick trip to the garbage disposal, and this whole mess would be someone else's problem. The thought was tempting. So tempting, my hand actually closed around the stack of papers. That's when I caught my reflection in Craig's window. The desert had aged me, sure. But it wasn't just the sun lines or the gray starting to dust my temples. It was the eyes. They belonged to someone I didn't recognize anymore, someone defeated. The memory hit me like a sandstorm. My first sergeant, catching me dozing during a supply inventory. You think tired is an excuse, soldier? Tired is what happens when you're doing it right. Tired means you showed up. Now show me you can finish. I set the beer down, untouched. The file stayed in my hand. Craig's boots scraped the back steps. 2 quick thumps, then the screen door. He carried a manila folder, dough-geared and coffee-stained. His face had that focused look I remembered from when we were kids, and he'd figured out who'd actually broken Mom's flower pot. Found something, he said, spreading the folder open. Papers spilled out. More service records, more dead ends. But there, circled in angry red ink, was a name. Colonel James Martinez, supposedly Brian's commanding officer during his heroic tour. Another fake? I asked. Oh, Martinez is real enough. Retired now, living in Arizona. Craig tapped the circled name. But here's the thing. I called his old XO. Martinez never commanded any unit Brian claims to be from. Never heard of him. So Martinez is scheduled to speak at the Memorial Day ceremony. Same one where Brian's getting his award. Craig's smile was sharp enough to cut. Imagine the reunion. I stared at the name, at the red circle containing it. Everything we'd gathered, every scrap of evidence, could lead to this moment. One call to Martinez would start an avalanche Brian couldn't charm his way out of. But it would also mean war. Real war. Not the kind Brian played at. The kind that leaves permanent scars. Craig must have read my hesitation. He gathered the papers slowly, deliberately. We make the call, or we don't, he said, squaring the edges with 2 quick taps. But if we do, he met my eyes. We finish this. The silence stretched between us, heavy with 18 months of betrayal, of lies, of watching my life become someone else's costume. I thought about that duffel upstairs, still packed, still waiting. I thought about being tired. I thought about finishing. Craig didn't waste time with pleasantries. He put the call on speaker, dialed the number, and when Colonel Martinez answered, my brother's voice went sharp as a drill sergeant's. Sir, this is Sergeant Craig Winslow, retired MP. We need to discuss Brian Reed. The silence on the other end lasted 3 heartbeats. Then, who? The colonel's voice was gravelly, suspicious. Claims he served under you in Kandahar. Says you're presenting him with a Valor Award next week. The hell I am. Martinez's tone could have stripped paint. Never heard of him. Craig laid out our evidence. Dates, unit numbers, medals Brian claimed. With each detail, Martinez's breathing got heavier. When Craig mentioned the VA loan fraud, the colonel cut him off. Send me everything, now. You ever see those nature shows where a predator spots prey? That's how Martinez sounded. Within an hour, our file was in his inbox. Within 2, my phone buzzed with a text from Craig. Mayor's office called. They want us there tomorrow morning. I barely slept that night. Kept seeing Brian's smug face, hearing Lauren's laugh. The alarm finally buzzed at 600. I threw on my cleanest flannel and met Craig in his truck. The mayor's office smelled like coffee and air freshener. 4 people waited. Mayor Wilson, her chief of staff, a stern-looking woman in a dark suit who introduced herself as Agent Cooper from the VA's Criminal Investigation Division, and Colonel Martinez himself, on video conference, his face filling a laptop screen. Gentlemen, the mayor's smile was tight. We have a situation. For the next hour, they outlined their plan. The Memorial Day ceremony would proceed as scheduled. Brian would be allowed his moment at the podium. But when he finished speaking, "We'll handle the rest," Agent Cooper said. Her voice had that calm certainty I remembered from MPs about to shut down a bar fight. "In the meantime," the mayor added, "absolute silence. This doesn't leave this room. Understood?" We nodded. What else could we do? 5 days. That's what stood between Brian and justice. 5 days of watching him strut around town like he owned it. He posted daily updates about his upcoming speech, each one more dramatic than the last. The local paper ran a feature about his service record. I couldn't finish reading it. Lauren showed up in every photo, glowing like she used to glow for me. Their latest post showed them shopping for his ceremony outfit. "Making sure my hero looks perfect." The timestamp said 3 days until Memorial Day. I started avoiding public places. Couldn't trust myself not to snap if I saw them. Craig kept me distracted with projects in his garage, but even the familiar smell of motor oil and metal couldn't settle my nerves. 2 days out, the city posted the official ceremony agenda online. There it was, right between the color guard presentation and the mayor's closing remarks. Distinguished Veteran Leader Brian Reed, Valor and Service Award acceptance. Distinguished, Veteran, Leader. Each word felt like a punch. I printed the agenda, folded it, unfolded it, read it again. My hands shook so bad I had to set it down. Then I saw it, the RSVP list. Public access, because of course it was. Lauren's name jumped out. Lauren Winslow plus guest, Brian Reed. She hadn't even changed her name yet, still using mine while she played cheerleader for his lies. Craig found me in his backyard that night, destroying his punching bag. He didn't say anything, just handed me a beer and stood watch while I wore myself out. "What if they're wrong?" I finally asked, slumping onto his deck steps. "What if he talks his way out of it?" "He won't." Craig's voice was steel. "Martinez is flying in personally for this. Says he wants to look this fraud in the eye when it happens." I nodded, but my chest felt tight. Every hour dragged. Every social media alert made me flinch. Brian posted a preview of his speech, just the first line. "Freedom isn't free, but honor is forever." The rage that hit me then was cold and clean. I watched the sunset paint Craig's yard in shadows, thinking about honor, about truth, about time. 24 hours to go. Brian Reed had no idea his countdown had started. The morning dawned clear and hot, perfect weather for exposing a fraud. I parked Craig's truck behind the library, far enough from the town square that Brian wouldn't spot us early. My hands were steady, but my chest felt like I'd swallowed rocks. "You good?" Craig asked, checking his watch. I nodded. 18 months in the desert taught me patience. This was just another mission. Remember those old war movies where everything goes quiet before the action starts? That's how it felt walking toward the crowd. The brass band was warming up. Red, white, and blue bunting draped every lamppost. Kids waved tiny flags. The whole scene screamed small-town America, exactly the kind of backdrop Brian had counted on. We found spots at the back, behind a cluster of elderly veterans in their VFW caps. The program said Brian was speaking third, right after the pledge. I scanned the front rows. Lauren sat dead center, wearing a sundress that probably cost more than my monthly BAH. Her hair caught the morning sun like a magazine ad. "Ladies and gentlemen," Mayor Wilson's voice crackled through the speakers, "please rise for our colors." The color guard stepped forward. I stood, hand over heart, watching real soldiers carry our flag. My throat tightened. Next to me, Craig's jaw clenched. 2 speakers later, the mayor returned to the podium. "It is my distinct honor to introduce a true American hero, a man who exemplifies the values of duty, sacrifice, and unwavering courage. Please welcome Captain Brian Reed." The crowd erupted. Brian stood, taking his sweet time. He wore dress blues like they were custom-made. Probably were, knowing him. Every ribbon, every badge gleamed. Lauren beamed up at him, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. He mounted the steps like he owned them, pausing at the top to wave. The sun hit his face just right, and for a second, I understood how he'd fooled so many people. He had that look, that practiced mix of strength and humility that civilians expect from their heroes. "My fellow Americans," he began, voice thick with emotion, "freedom isn't free." That's when I saw them. 2 MPs in crisp uniforms, moving through the crowd like sharks through water. Behind them, Agent Cooper nodded to the mayor. My pulse kicked up. Brian was mid-sentence about brothers in arms when the first MP reached the stage. The second circled around back. The crowd's applause faltered, confused murmurs replacing it. The first MP leaned in close to Brian's ear. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw the effect. Brian's face went from confident to cornered in the space of a heartbeat. His eyes darted left, right, found no escape. "Sir," the MP said, loud enough now for the mic to catch it. "Step away from the podium." Lauren stood up, her tissue crumpling in her fist. "What's happening?" The mayor backed away, giving the MPs room. Brian tried to smile, to play it off, but his hands shook. "There must be some mistake. Brian Reed," the second MP cut in, "you are under arrest for stolen valor, fraud, and impersonation of a federal service member." The crowd gasped. Phones came up, recording. Brian's face went ghost white, like someone had pulled a plug and drained all the swagger out of him. Those shiny medals suddenly looked like what they were, costume jewelry on a con man. The handcuffs clicked loud enough to echo off the courthouse walls. Lauren screamed, not a movie scream, but something raw and ugly. She lunged forward, but Agent Cooper intercepted her. "Ma'am, stay back. This is a federal matter." I watched Brian's shoulders slump as the MPs led him down the steps. His boots, probably ordered online, scraped concrete. The crowd parted, dozens of eyes following his descent. Some people whispered, others just stared. A VFW member in front of me spat on the ground as Brian passed. "Damn disgrace." Lauren tried to follow, mascara running, but two uniformed officers held her back. Her eyes found mine in the crowd. The look she gave me could have stripped paint. I didn't smile, didn't nod, just watched as the MPs escorted Brian to a waiting vehicle. The man who stole my life, my wife, and tried to steal my identity was finally showing his true colors, and they weren't red, white, and blue. The mayor returned to the podium, trying to restore order. But the damage was done. Memorial Day would never be the same in our town, and somewhere in that chaos, I felt something hard inside me start to loosen. Craig's hand found my shoulder. "You good?" I watched the patrol car pull away, Brian's silhouette small in the back seat. "Yeah, I'm good." The morning after Brian's arrest, I sat in Craig's truck across from my old house, our old house. Lauren paced the porch in her designer yoga pants, phone pressed to her ear. Even from here, I could see she was crying. A news van idled at the curb. The reporter, some kid fresh out of college, kept trying to wave Lauren down for a comment. She'd slam the door every time he approached. It was like watching a tennis match, except nobody was winning. "Look at that," Craig said, sipping his coffee. "That's the face of a woman who bet everything on a liar." I nodded, remembering how she used to practice her yoga on that same porch, waving to neighbors, playing the perfect military wife. Now those same neighbors hurried past, heads down. Amazing how fast community support can evaporate when the truth comes out. My phone buzzed. Another news alert. Local hero revealed as fraud. Below it, Brian's mugshot stared back at me. Gone was the practiced smile, the squared shoulders. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. The article listed the charges: stolen valor, impersonating a federal service member, attempted loan fraud using stolen deployment papers. Each count carried serious time. "You see the Veterans Group's statements?" Craig asked, scrolling through his own phone. "VFW's calling for maximum sentencing. American Legion's organizing a town hall about stolen valor awareness." He chuckled. "Guess Brian's going to be their cautionary tale." Social media was worse. People who'd posed for selfies with Brian now couldn't delete them fast enough. His motivational speaking page disappeared. The high school pulled down the video of his leadership talk. It was like watching someone get erased in real time. A fresh wave of reporters arrived. Lauren retreated inside, but not before I caught the look on her face, raw panic. She'd hitched her wagon to the wrong star, and now she was falling with it. "Your lawyer called," Craig said, breaking into my thoughts. "Judge signed off this morning." My chest tightened. "And?" "Full asset restoration. All her claims dismissed." He handed me the paper. "She tried saying you abandoned the marriage during deployment. Judge wasn't having it." I scanned the document. There it was in black and white. Divorce granted, joint accounts returned to my control. Lauren's attempt to claim hardship denied. The judge even cited Brian's fraud as evidence of bad faith on her part. "They're saying Brian hit 3 other towns with the same scam," Craig continued. "Different names, different units, but same story. Play the hero, chase the glory, try to cash in before anyone checks the records." He shook his head. "Dumb bastard got greedy with that VA loan, though. That's what really sank him. Another reporter approached Lauren's door. This time she didn't even answer. Through the window, I could see her curled up on the couch, the same one where I'd found her laughing with Brian that first day home. "You know what gets me?" I said, watching her. She really believed him. Even now, I bet she's telling herself there's some explanation, some reason it's all a mistake. Craig snorted. People believe what they want to believe, especially when the truth ain't pretty. The local paper hit the driveway across the street. Even from here, I could read the headline, "Stolen Valor Arrest Rocks Memorial Day Ceremony." Brian's photo took up half the page. Below it, a smaller picture showed Lauren being held back by the officers, mascara running down her face. "You ready?" Craig asked, starting the engine. I took one last look at the house, at Lauren's silhouette in the window. 18 months in the desert, eating sand and missing home, while she fell for a man playing dress-up with honors I'd earned. But watching her now, alone and humiliated, I felt something close to pity. "Yeah," I said. "I'm ready." We pulled away from the curb, leaving Lauren to her reporters and her regrets. In my pocket, the divorce papers felt lighter than I'd expected, maybe because the weight I'd been carrying wasn't in the paperwork at all. The key in the front door still worked, though it stuck a bit, like the house itself was hesitating to let me in. Inside, emptiness echoed. Lauren had cleared out fast after the scandal broke, leaving behind only what she couldn't sell or didn't want to remember. You ever notice how a place feels different when you know it's not yours anymore? The walls seemed closer, the air heavier. Even the sunlight coming through the windows felt wrong, like it was trespassing same as me. A business card sat centered on the kitchen counter. Sarah Mitchell, Luxury Homes. Guess Lauren was serious about the quick sale. The granite countertop where we used to eat breakfast together gleamed cold and bare. I headed upstairs, my boots loud against the hardwood. The master bedroom stood empty except for a few wire hangers in the closet. The bathroom mirror reflected just me now. No more of Lauren's makeup scattered across the counter. No more of her flowery shower curtain. Amazing how fast 18 years can disappear. In the spare room, I found what I came for. An old cardboard box pushed into the corner. Inside was the stuff Lauren wouldn't touch. A faded photo of me and Craig as kids, grinning gap-toothed at the camera while holding up fishing poles at our grandpa's lake. The carefully folded flag from my first deployment ceremony. A handful of medals I'd earned but never displayed. Lauren always said they made the house feel too military. The smell of dust and disuse filled my nose as I lifted each item out. Funny how memories stick to things. That flag still carried traces of desert sand in its creases. The photo's edges were soft from years of being handled. Even the medals felt warm somehow, like they remembered the pride of earning them. "Mr. Winslow?" I turned. The realtor stood in the doorway, clipboard in hand. Sarah Mitchell looked exactly like her card photo. Professional smile, perfect hair. "Just collecting the last of my things," I said, tucking the box under my arm. "Of course." She nodded sympathetically. "Take your time. Though, I should mention we have a showing in about 20 minutes. I glanced around one final time. Nothing else here belonged to me anymore. Not the walls I'd painted, not the floors I'd refinished, not even the memories we'd made. All of it was just real estate now. "I'm done," I said, and meant it. The drive out of town felt like breaking surface after being underwater too long. Each mile marker put more distance between me and everything that had imploded. Craig's words from breakfast that morning echoed in my head. "Remember that Riverside lot I told you about? The one past Miller's Creek? Still for sale, just saying." He wasn't subtle, my brother, but he wasn't wrong either. 2 hours later, I pulled onto a dirt road that wound through old growth trees. The river appeared through breaks in the foliage, sunlight dancing on its surface. At the end of the track stood a small "For Sale" sign, weathered but still readable. I got out and walked the property line. The air smelled clean here, pine needles and moving water. No traffic noise, no neighbors' music, no echoes of a life I'd lost, just the sound of the current and wind in the trees. My phone had 1 bar of service, enough to make a call to the number on the sign. The owner, an elderly man named Jack, agreed to meet me right there. "Been holding on to this place for years," he said when he arrived, leaning on his truck door. "Waiting for the right buyer, someone who'd appreciate the quiet." I looked out over the water. A pair of hawks circled overhead, riding thermals. "How much?" He named a figure well within my restored savings. "Could do monthly payments too, if that helps." I shook my head. "I'll pay cash. Just want to start fresh." Jack smiled, understanding in his eyes. Sometimes fresh is the only way forward. We shook hands on it there by the river. Within a week, the paperwork was done. The lot, my lot, waited empty but full of possibility. No more ghosts of what used to be. No more pretending things could go back to normal. Just the river, the trees, and whatever I chose to build next. The morning air bit clean and sharp, carrying the scent of pine and river water. I'd slept better than I had in months, maybe years, the kind of deep rest that comes from knowing exactly where you stand. My coffee steamed in the early light as I stepped onto the deck of my half-built cabin. You ever notice how some mornings feel different? Like the world's trying to tell you something? This was one of those. Birds were making a racket in the trees, and the river sound had that special clarity you only get when the air's just right. The sun hadn't cleared the tree line yet, but the sky was turning that pale gold that makes everything look new. I set my mug down on a stack of lumber, good pressure-treated pine that Craig had helped me haul up yesterday. The flag was already laid out on my workbench, each fold crisp and precise. 18 years of service had taught me how to handle it right. My fingers traced the edges, remembering every deployment it had seen me through. The post hole was ready. I dug it the evening before, making sure it was exactly regulation depth. Some habits you don't break, and doing things by the book was one of mine. The concrete had set overnight, holding the mounting bracket steady. Craig would have laughed at how much time I spent leveling it, but some things matter more than others. I lifted the flag assembly carefully. The morning breeze caught it just right as I lined it up with the bracket. Metal clicked against metal, a sound as familiar as my own heartbeat. Each bolt went in smooth, each nut tightened just so. No wobble, no lean. The kind of job that would pass any inspection. The plaque was the last piece. I'd ordered it special from a shop 2 towns over, had them engrave it exactly how I wanted. The brass caught the first real sunlight of the day as I unwrapped it from its protective cloth. 4 words, simple, true. My hands didn't shake as I mounted it at the base of the flagpole. Each screw went in straight and true. The metal was cool against my fingers as I wiped away the last smudges with my sleeve. Honor isn't worn, it's proven. I stepped back, coffee forgotten, and looked at what I'd built. The flag stood perfectly vertical against the brightening sky, the plaque below it catching light like a promise kept. Around me, the half-finished cabin waited for more work. Honest work, the kind that leaves your muscles aching and your mind clear. The river kept flowing, the birds kept singing. But something had changed. Not in them, in me. You know that moment when you finally set something right? When all the pieces click into place and you can breathe again? That's what this was. Standing there, watching my flag catch the morning breeze, I felt the weight of the past few months slide away. I didn't need the town to know my name. Didn't need Lauren to regret her choices or Brian to suffer more than justice demanded. Didn't even need Craig to keep telling me I'd done the right thing. What I needed was right here, a flag earned through service, not stolen for show. A foundation built on truth, not lies. A future I could shape with my own 2 hands. The sun cleared the trees, lighting up the brass plaque like a beacon. Those 4 words said everything that needed saying. Not just about Brian's fraud or Lauren's betrayal, but about life itself, about who I was and would always be. I picked up my coffee, now cold, and took a long drink. Time to get to work. The cabin wasn't going to build itself, and I had a lot of daylight ahead of me. I believe stories like this find us for a reason. If this one touched you, please subscribe. I share a new one every day, and tomorrow's might be the one your heart's been waiting for.